Good evening. I now call the 52nd meeting of the Jacksonville Environment and Appearance Advisory Committee to order. I want to welcome everyone to our meeting. My name is Betty Scheffelbein. If everyone else would introduce themselves. Grace?
Grace Haubrick.
Asa Keys. Linda Smith. Henderson.
Dr. Angela Washington, Council Liaison.
Stacey Giles.
Jason Larson, Chief Code Enforcement Officer.
Tracy Jackson, Interim Neighborhood Improvement Services Director.
Ooh,
Lynn Hargett will work for the city.
thank you. Every committee member is asked to update their contact information and to correct the information the city has on file. As a note, on June 16th, 2020, the City Council reappointed Grace Haubrick, Ozzie Keys, and Luis Williams, Sunshine, to 2 years terms expiring June the 30th. Members should review the agenda listing and adopt the agenda before the proceedings. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Grace.
I second.
Thank you. Minutes of the February 6, 2020 meeting are provided for your consideration. Could I have a motion to adopt, correct, or reject the minutes?
I make a motion to adopt the minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Following the minutes is the official attendance. Excuse me. Oh, may I have a vote on that? All in favor?
In favor.
Aye.
Following the minutes is the official attendance report, which must be submitted to the clerk after each meeting. Should there be a mistake in this report, please let the staff know as soon as possible. For the next few items, I'm going to call on Glenn Hargett, who serves as the staff to this committee. Mr. Hargett.
And as previously introduced, we have with us here Tracy and Jason, and they're going to do basically the annual report that is given to this committee about work of community development and its connection to clean and green.
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to give you an update. We have recently changed our department name to Neighborhood Improvement Services. Our mission is to connect cities, Jacksonville's diverse communities and neighborhoods with their city government. And we also wanted to facilitate effective public participation, enhance economic opportunity, and implement our community-based strategies to improve the quality of life for our citizens. Within our department, we have community development, which we will continue to administer HUD funds. We will do planning and administration for those funds so that we can strategically put capital improvement projects and invest in some areas that have been distinctively identified by HUD. So we have recently put in the Georgetown bathroom, and we also had, we installed the Jack and Miette splash pad in the bathroom in that area. We also have demolition within our department, and I'll go over that in a few minutes. We have residential rehabilitation program where we help our citizens repair their homes if they qualify with our HUD funds. We also have our neighborhood housing initiative where we have taken dilapidated structures, we purchased them, and we have reconstructed them on those lots so that we can provide affordable, nice new homes for clients who qualify. We'll talk about code enforcement with our Chief Code Enforcement, Jason Larson, in a few minutes. Wanted to bring up that we also have nonprofit training where board training is an annual event here with the city. The local nonprofits are required to attend that training so that they can receive local funds and our CDBG funds. We've also established a small toolkit program in which we have purchased a power washer, lawnmower, and some small garden tools. So if anyone wanted to come and rent those out, they can come and improve the appearance of their house. So if you're a city resident, you can come in and rent those items out. Finally, we have the youth council within our department, Pamela Trafton. She is the liaison to the Jacksonville Youth Council, where area high school students, they will come together and they will try to strategize and they come to make a difference within their community. Within our department, we hope to improve the overall appearance of the city with our demolition program. Currently, we have demolished 137 structures since June 2010, and we also have 2 demolitions in process. With that, I just wanted to show you some examples of the before and after of some structures we had throughout the city. That's the before, and here is after. This is another structure that we recently demolished. That's the before, and that is the after. And we also had this structure to demolish. This is our city crews in action, demolishing that structure, and this is after. So we've had some great impacts here with the city with our demolition program. Currently, we also are focusing some efforts in the Country Club Villas neighborhood, where we have purchased 3 structures and we're renovating those to make it affordable housing for qualified clients. Our next steps in that neighborhood include developing a neighborhood revitalization strategy area plan. That is going to be coming from the UNC School of Government under the Development Finance Initiative. They are hired to give us report and data so that we can facilitate private investment and stewardship and to improve the aesthetics, property values, and the quality of life in that area. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Code Enforcement Officer, Jason Larson.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening. Code enforcement. So one of the things that we're kind of changing up a little bit, adding to, not only have we changed to neighborhood improvement services, but code enforcement has really teamed up with the housing projects for this initiative. So we've teamed up with the fire department, with the police department, and really have tried to become more proactive in especially our minimum housing. So this is what we do, code enforcement. We deal with 2 different types of codes. We deal with Muni Code. We also deal with the Unified Development Ordinance. And these under here, the public nuisance, junk vehicle, minimum housing, non-residential structures, obviously commercial buildings, and zoning enforcement. That's what we do on a day-to-day. And then this is our Unified Development Ordinance. So these are the things outside of the Muni Code that we enforce. Land use, signage, landscaping, parking standards, and home occupations. So this is probably one of our most common issues that we deal with as far as violations of the Muni Code. Comes out of Chapter 15, which is a nuisance. Anything that injures, endangers the comfort, repose, health, safety, or welfare of others, offends decency, is offensive to the senses, unlawfully interferes with, obstructs, or tends to obstruct, or renders dangerous for passage, any public or private street, highway, sidewalk, stream, ditch, or drainage. One of the great things about number 4, if you look at it, excuse me, public or private street, so that's any of the city-owned streets, but private streets also we can enforce. Highway and sidewalk and stream, ditch, or drainage. That often also involves other departments. That's the streets department, that's sometimes the parks department, that's sometimes stormwater. So we've really begun to collaborate with the other departments in order to get some of these violations abated. And then finally, a nuisance is anything that interferes with the comfortable enjoyment of life and property or tends to depreciate the value of the property of others. So these are the public nuisances that we deal with. High grass and weeds, that's on top because that's our number 1 violation. Trash and debris, stagnant water, noise and odor, and neighborhood blight. So here's a little picture of high grass and weeds. Right now we've in our code, we're actually more strict than some of our surrounding areas like Swansboro, they have a 12-inch minimum, so anything over 12 inches has to be cut. New Bern, places like that. Ours is actually 8 inches. So anytime that we find high grass and weed that's 8 inches or above, we start to put out our courtesy notices and tell them to get it cut. And then trash and debris, we get called for this. Of course, if we do proactive enforcement on this as well. Stagnant water, of course, that creates all kinds of problems for mosquitoes, vermin, things like that. And then junk vehicles, we deal with junk vehicles also. And again, we coordinate with the police department, NCDOT, to get those vehicles towed out and away. So neighborhood blight can be kind of a encompassing word for all that we deal with. So any condition that contributes to neighborhood blight or endangers public health or safety. Building and structures, so anything that's dilapidated or unfit for habitation, unsanitary, it's a mess, it's a fire hazard. These are things that actually fall under minimum housing. So we have in our building code a minimum housing standards. So if somebody moves into an apartment complex and there's mold or there's holes in the floor or the plumbing doesn't work and the landlord is not responding, this is where we step in and we can, coordinate repairs, get them moved out into something better and stuff like that. Hurricane Florence damage did a lot actually, and we actually did an assessment, excuse me, after this hurricane, and there was a lot of damage, mostly roofs. We counted over 200 roofs that were damaged during Hurricane Florence that had tarps put on the roof to keep the rain out. Here it is, October 2020, and we still have homes in need of repair. Fortunately, we kind of initiated an assessment survey. Some of you might remember we brought in our former chief, Gary Willett. He spent over 30 days canvassing the entire city and accounting for each and every individual home that had these tarps on it. As of today, we're down to under about 24 homes left that are remaining. Unfortunately, some of those homes were severely damaged through trees, through the roof, through the garage, through a bedroom. And this is our process. So we are mostly complaint driven. So we receive complaints all throughout the day, every day, either direct phone call to our officers' cell phones or to the office, and we respond to them. Our inspection time was within 48 hours of we received that complaint. If we validate that complaint, then we submit a notice, anywhere from 7 to 15 days for the property owner to comply. And then compliance really depends on whether the property owner is willing to cooperate and abate it, or sometimes we have to go and abate it ourselves. If we do that, if the city has to abate, we go through a contractor who typically, we're talking about high grass and weeds, we cut the grass, and then we charge whatever the contractor fees are, and then we also have an administrative fee for abatement, which is $200. So that's high grass and weeds. We have some different processes and timeframes for things that are a little more severe or a little more heavy circumstances, such as minimum housing. That's a different process. But this is what we did last year. So we had 2,186 code cases. So that's anything in the Muni Code and the UDO that is high grass and weeds, junk vehicles, trash and debris, things like that. So 2,186 code cases between basically 2 officers for the fiscal year. 795 zoning inspections. Zoning inspections are what our code enforcement officers do for the building department. So that's where that other code comes in, that Unified Development Ordinance. Those are things like signage, when a business puts up a new sign, We go in and do those inspections. We also look at setbacks, things like that. And then 336 minimum housing cases. That's more than doubled from last year, which I'm pretty proud of our officers for. Because of our cooperation within Neighborhood Improvement Services, we're really trying to help that clean and green initiative and get as many of these properties back up to looking good that we can. So overall, fiscal year, we covered 3,317 cases. So we didn't have a whole lot of downtime this year. So that's my presentation for code enforcement.
Y'all have any questions to ask of our wonderful group here?
The stagnant water, do they also check the little ditches by the houses? Is that what, would that consider a stagnant water?
Stagnant
problem?
water, yes, ma'am. And again, we have a really great interdepartment teamwork. So if it's a ditch, more than likely it's city-owned a
Right.
lot of percent of the time. So they'll call us and we will go out and we'll let either stormwater or streets know that there's ditch issues. And then if we find out that it's actually privately owned, then they kind of come back with us and say, hey, there is a problem, there is stagnant water, the people are dumping brush, but it's on somebody's private property. So then it kind of falls back on us, and we send out our notices and go through that process to get it taken care of. But yes, absolutely. A lot of it is either ditches, like you said, or pools that are unattended.
Right. I don't have any questions.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
You're welcome. Thank you.
These are
Very interesting.
dedicated people.
Yes, they are.
Great work, and this is much appreciated in our city.
Yes.
It's clean group. Thank you, Tracy.
Yes.
Thank you.
With your permission, they're gonna retreat.
Oh, sure. Retreat.
We're gonna talk now, though, Councilmember Dr. Washington wanted to have some comments, and we're here for those too.
I just wanted to say that this past Tuesday, Ms. Jackson and I had an opportunity to go through my ward in particular and to take a look at some of the housing in the neighborhoods within Ward 4, and specifically, we focused on Belfork Road. We had a chance to visit May Patch and Texie Lane Road, which is like in the Dewdrop area on Belfork, that's closer to Lejeune Boulevard or Highway 24. Then in the middle of Belfork Road, we had an opportunity to go onto Market Street. That area is called the Pickett Town area, and then closer to the Highway 17 and Belfork Road, we had an opportunity to visit the Plaza Station area and just taking a look at some of those houses because, in the city of Jacksonville, we want to make sure that our city is representative of our motto, which is the caring community. And we know that throughout the course of history, when this city basically was developing and growing, that certain neighborhoods, individuals were allowed to live, other neighborhoods was segregated. So in this 21st century, basically, we were just looking at maybe some of those neighborhoods where our city dollars can go back to those taxpayers and to do some type of aesthetics, cosmetics to bring the neighborhood up. We saw like the dilapidated houses and looking at what can be done in terms of funding resources to work with homeowners, that if they wanted the houses to be demolished because unlivable housing, it does create a safety issue. It can cause a crime issue within the neighborhood. And so we just took a journey looking at these particular neighborhoods and started putting our brain power together. We wanted to do a road trip with everyone, but with COVID-19, that's kind of restricting and limiting us. But whenever everything is all back together, I feel comfortable that we should be able to visit these neighborhoods and to brainstorm and to figure out, what is it that we can do to utilize our resources that we have within the cities, and, to just look at some of the things that we can put our money back into these neighborhoods, and to use these allocations of funding to help with the cosmetics, because, when you feel good about your neighborhood and you feel good about your home, there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of ownership, there's a sense of responsibility. But sometimes we realize in life, hard times can happen to anyone at any given point in time. And sometimes people may just not have the means, to do the aesthetics themselves, but if there is funding available, at least we can find a starting point, even bringing our kids, our youth council that's looking for SAT hour, community service hours, that we can make it a project for the springtime to go in and start doing some cleaning with the residents, just to let them know that they're not being ignored and they haven't forgotten it. Because, oftentimes, when you have wealth, oftentimes it's very easy to focus on those communities. But sometimes those who have been left behind or don't have necessarily the wealth, they're still part of our community. They are still contributing their dollars, their taxpayer dollars, and it would behoove us that we look back at these communities that might seem to have been forgotten, and to figure out best practices, how we can invest back into these communities like they have been investing and supporting the city. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Just wanted to remind those folks who are watching, if you need any kind of assistance as far as repairs and you live within the city limits and you think that you qualify based on your income, please contact us. You can reach us at 910-938-5286, just to inquiry, just to ask some questions, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
And if you missed the number, just dial City Hall.
Yes. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, now we're going to talk about some things that the council members already mentioned a little bit of previously, was that about, it's time to talk about the holiday decorations and recognitions. And these are all good things. And what we want to first talk about is, obviously, we've gotten some good response to our holiday contest in the past, and we would like to see more of that happen. We want to talk about particularly Halloween and Thanksgiving just for a little bit. We provided at your place the guidelines from the state and the CDC that talk about appropriate operations for Halloween and such. And to that end, the city will be putting out a directive here very shortly about what's permissible within the city and what's not. And we're hoping that people take seriously the 6-foot separation and not try to engage in activities that might, further COVID-19 infection and things to that end. And one of the options that was discussed among some of the members, just casually and such, there was, let's bring back that Halloween contest so we can get a little bit of excitement about staying home, or at least making something happen. And so we are proposing, based on the comments that have been made, about taking nominations seriously for Halloween and Thanksgiving. If you'll recall, we had some great nominations many years ago, and then it tapered off. And then we just stopped in that regard, didn't get many at all. And the Christmas type decorations were really well received as it was. So we want to do a real emphasis on that, partner with police as part of their messaging that they're doing about what to do for Halloween, and say, make it a family activity. Let us know, submit a picture of it, send it to us, just much like we have our other nominations that we take for people for recognitions. Have you folks judge them based on the picture, but if you want to do independent investigation, you can certainly do that, and then make award and recognize them as part of our regular program. So, Madam Chairman and others,
I
what kind of thoughts do you have of that?
think that sounds great, making it a family affair, so the kids won't feel like they're left out, you
Absolutely.
know, for the trick or treat.
It would be worth trying.
Is that a consensus then? Okay, well, we'll take that as a consensus and go forward from there. And we will publish them on our website so the public can kind of voice too what their opinion is of it. Now, the Chamber of Commerce is not having the Christmas parade this year for reasons we all now know. And they want to do a program to recognize commercial businesses that have decorated well for Christmas. And they're even going to put a cash prize with it. So what they've asked about is that, that maybe there's some partnership with the Environmental and Appearance Advisory Committee in there, that you folks might help to weigh in on some of the ones that might need to be recognized, or do your own nominations of some of these places. Equally, they will not be doing residential, so we want to own that part of the spirit of the season, and have people nominate their own homes, or you nominate homes and such there. The public can nominate their neighbors or otherwise in there. And we've already got the web forms done, where we'll actually just upload the pictures and then let you judge them from those pictures that are there and vote on it as it was, as to which ones that you think are out there. We'll publish them across our social media and other places to get attention of that as it was. And the chamber has agreed to cross-promote. They'll promote the winners and entries into the program, as well as they're asking for the commercial entries to be done. So we'd like your concurrence on that program, what you all think about this, and whether you think that's a good idea.
I think it's great to have that collaboration between, and I think more of the citizens will be more apt to entertain the idea.
Absolutely. And we're hoping the recognition will be a little
Yes.
broad,
Yes.
from the points there as it was too. So we'll proceed with that, and we'll send some information out to you folks to make that information available, and so you can pass it to your friends and neighbors. Well, clearly, going to the next item, the tree board and Arbor Day, we all know this was different. This kind of really, we had some grand plans for this. This was the year we were going to be at Northwoods Park Middle School. We were going to put a plaque there for the first tree that was planted as part of the Beirut. The young people were excited about the ribbons and programs such as that. All that's gone. But we didn't let that stop us from having an Arbor Day celebration. So you know that we had the virtual Arbor Day out in the middle of Marine Boulevard with the staff from Parks Division. And we got this done and had a good time out there. We rolled out our 40-year program there. We had the Forest Ranger here with us, and we got some things done out there. Trees got planted, and that was a great deal. There's Miss Willie down there showing how she can plant trees. So, and Betty was giving great instruction to the parks crew as to how they should take this on as it was there. And Grace, we see you back there. You're independently planting that tree there. So we really do appreciate all of y'all coming out. The Arbor Day Foundation basically said you didn't have to have an Arbor Day event this year. We had one though, and we've got lots of good pictures, and we have the live Facebook that we did and all those type of things. And we're gonna still enter the event. The applications are due here in a few days, and we're gonna enter that and go forth with it. They've pretty much suspended some of the other programs that they had for this year because they know this was a special year. It's really something that's out there as it was. Now, what we want to ask you about is this is something several of you know about, and we've just talked about that with the Yellow Ribbon campaign. The public schools cannot have field trips. So they cannot go and put things out at the Beirut Memorial Grove. They want to help make the ribbons, but they're not gonna have a lot of time with it based on how the schools are operating, the public schools are operating at this time. So we'll still let them tell the story. They'll just do it internally and with some materials that Ron Bowers left with them from last year and such there. And what we're looking at too is to look at how we could deploy those ribbons. So we're asking if you might help volunteer this. And we're gonna ask the Onslow Civic Affairs Committee if they'd like to volunteer. We can't take you all out there as a group. And the biggest reason why is there's no parking there. And we have to have almost police help to get us into the site if we're doing anything organized as it is. So we would like to arrange some times when you folks might meet us here at City Hall. We'll drive you out there. We'll spend a good period of time, putting out some ribbons, and then we'll come back and do things like that. And we'll do the same thing with the Civic Affairs Committee. Does that meet y'all's thoughts? I mean, you like that idea?
Yes.
Sounds good.
We really want to push this out for the week before the observance. And we want to also encourage the public through what we're doing with the Beirut Memorial Advisory Board and other type of entities. Civic Affairs Committee is really going to dive into this, is to ask people to put a yellow ribbon somewhere themselves and take a picture of it. And then with a hashtag, so the families, the Gold Star families, who are not invited to come this year to the Beirut observance because we had to close that down as it is and just have a virtual ceremony. But we'd like to send them the word that this community has not forgotten, that we're going to continue this tradition of remembering what October 23rd means to them and their families and to us as a community about losing our friends and neighbors during that time. Any thoughts or anything to that end, to this matter? Well, I'm going to speed right through some of the other items then. Among them is the recycling. Many of you might know, and we provided in your agenda, a communication that came from the state. The state is hearing more and more communities talk about abandoning recycling because of the cost of picking it up, the cost of disposing of it, and the things such as that. And a significant amount of this has happened because the problem has been that there's really the markets. Remember, you folks went out there and looked around at the matter. The markets have shrunk. There's a different thing. And then, of course, there's further challenges because of COVID-19 that's out there as it was. Recycling does help preserve the landfill capacity so that we won't have to pay. Obviously, this year, the city council had to make some raises, not because of anything that we did, but because the county's got to prepare to build the next landfill. And it's not inexpensive. It will cost millions of dollars for just a landfill. And so that fee, they've gone up on the fee effective October when you go across the scales there as to what the charge is for disposing of them. Now, the state law does prohibit certain items to be disposed of, and I'm double clicking, and that is particularly aluminum cans and plastic bottles. That is just outright banned out there. And the state law says that each municipality has to maintain a solid waste reduction program. It doesn't say they have to have a recycling program, but they have to have a waste reduction program that's in place. And equally so, they're encouraged to separate marketable items from the final disposal so they could be disposed of in a way that, might bring income or whatever. Now, when you all went out there to the tour, you found out how that thing operates. Now, to think back about it, that was June of 2018 that we were out there last. Since then, a lot of things have changed, particularly the markets have gone even worse than what they were. And there's also more problems with what to be done in that effort. So we want to still continue to ask people to recycle. And you're now informed of what that issue is. And we always want to use this to remind everybody about the recycling basics. For one of your future meetings, we want to repeat that little contest that we had. And we want you folks to go between yourself about what is acceptable recycling and what is not. Excuse me. So we want to look to that end. Excuse me there. Okay. So, oh my, well, thank you with the ready here. Dr. Washington, thank you. How embarrassing. But it is. Let's go through these real fast. Plastics, the bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars, those things that are just down. You do need to empty and rinse, and don't send us to pumps. Empty and rinse of metal cans, all kinds of metal cans out there. Glasses, bottles, and jars, empty and rinse, we take them. Paper cartons and cardboard, we take them. Flatten the cardboard though, don't make it out there. These are the things that we do not take. Aerosol cans, aluminum foil, batteries, ceramic items. Notice that anything that's food tainted, you might have a container that in and of itself would have been accepted, but that it's been spoiled by that. the famous Dr. Woodruff always talks about pizza boxes than this part of the deal. And let's make a particular note to talk about tanglers, things that will get into that machinery and mess it up. You all saw how that big conveyor works, and you can imagine just a string of lights would cause a problem. Now, obviously, we don't want people to bag the recyclables. They want to be loose and empty to the containers. And something new since we last met and talked about this, don't put your single-use mask as a recyclable material, because it may well be contaminated as it was. And not the plastic, not the gloves or anything like that, and not those disinfectant wipes either. Those are all asked to be out of it from the end. Well, we've arrived at the point in the meeting now in which we talk about the election of officers, but at this point, we don't have a quorum, so we cannot proceed in that. So we'll have to delay this to the next meeting for that end of that matter as it is. And I'll just quickly do a census update, since we're asked to do so. Technically, yesterday, September 30th, was the last day of the official operation of the census. But there was a court judgment that has caused them to push it out for 5 more days. But in reality, the Census Bureau has said, we're gonna be through in 5 days, and that's it, as it was. Here are the response rates that we have for our community and some of the surrounding ones. As you know, the mayor did a friendly wager with the mayor of Greenville, and we did win. So this is a good thing. Not by much, but a win is a win, in there. And so he'll be asked to put on a bulldog suit and pose in front of some sort of pirate activity. so that can be realized for us. I do want you to see what the 2010 response rates were. And now remember, that was when you actually had to fill out a form and send it in. So people actually mailed it in. See how much higher they were? COVID-19 changed everything. I think also we were talking to census workers who told us people weren't answering the door when they would knock. Things have changed, and I think that they're really seeing the cumulative effect of what that was. And then there was a disinformation campaign that was put forward about the census is fake. You don't need to be doing this. Why are you doing this? And it was pretty intensive out there as it was. North Carolina did finish with a 97.3% of the households were contacted, and that's based on when the census worker went out there from that overall North Carolina rate of 62.9, this is what was made up from it. So some 31% basically were out there, or a little less than 30% rather, were out there, and they were actually contacted by knock. At a point when they go back to some home 3 times, they're allowed to do a proxy, in which they ask the neighbor next door, how many people live there? What do they look like? What ages are they? But now, those proxies don't count when we're doing redistricting. We don't get that credit. So North Carolina could lose that effort of having a 13th congressman this time in account again if the proxies were that large. Now, we'll count toward a census count, but not. And here's how the money could look just based on the 97% count in North Carolina. If that's here in Onslow, we don't know the final numbers for the households reached in Onslow County. That number, they've not released it for down that fine. So if we were just to apply that, we still will lose about $103 million over the next 10 years that could have come into Onslow County for roads, schools, and for healthcare particularly. There is still time, if you know somebody who hasn't filled it out, to tell them to go online and do it, or call the 800 number. Either of those methods are still there. And so we want everyone to ask people, have you completed your census? Did you participate in that? Because in $16,000 worth of federal funds will come for every one person that's counted out there at the time. That's all we have for this evening, Madam Chairman and members. And if you have any questions for us or anything to that, we'll be happy to entertain.
Okay, do any committee members have anything to say? Want to make a comment on anything? Okay, if there are none, then let's take note of the next meeting. It will be Thursday, December 2nd at 6 p.m. If there's no other business, I'll adjourn the meeting now. Thank you for coming.